No matter where you go or what you read these days, for every person that you listen to, you'll find differing, wide-ranging opinions on whether Bitcoin has any value or not. And this obviously has a bearing on people using their hard-earned money to invest in it. Since this is a big topic of debate that many people have a difficult time wrapping their mind around, let's spend a couple of minutes talking about it. Like everything else, sometimes it's best to study a well-known analog first to see if we can draw any parallels. And perhaps the best comparison that we can make is to the US dollar. Since 1971, the US dollar no longer represents how much gold that it could buy, so technically it has no intrinsic value anymore. If you look at the front of the dollar bill, notice that it's called a Federal Reserve note. The value of this note is represented by how much foreign currency it can buy, which is called an exchange rate. It's also valued against treasury notes, and lastly, it's valued against foreign exchange reserves, which are the amount of dollars held by foreign governments. The more that others hold, the lower the supply, so the higher the value of the dollar. The point that I want to make here is that the value of the dollar is not based on any hard asset. It's based on perceived value in the stability and economic power of the U.S. government and economy, or put another way, it's based on the faith that the U.S. will be able to collect enough taxes to stay running. It has no intrinsic value by itself, other than the paper being worth approximately 5.4 cents. This is why we call it fiat currency. Fiat is Latin for let it be so. I know that this comes as a shock to many people that think that the US dollar is backed by something tangible, like all the gold in Fort Knox. It is not. It is only backed by the full faith and credit of the US government. Now we're going to jump back to the 2008 financial crisis. If you went through that period, did you have full faith in the credit of the US government? Maybe you did, maybe you did not. I'm not here to question nor judge. Let's just say it was an extremely difficult time for everyone to go through, and extraordinary measures were required to pull everyone through, which included bailouts of some institutions, yet not others. This created a gap of faith amongst many and led to the development of a blockchain-based currency. And as we know, the blockchain is an open, decentralized, distributed ledger that is inherently secure and immutable. This would allow financial transactions to go through regardless of the economic viability of the sovereignty that they were founded in, essentially separating a financial transaction from the nation of origin. Now we get to Bitcoin and other similar cryptocurrencies. Back to our original question, do they hold value? Well, the first value that we can spot is that transactions are conducted outside of the functioning mechanisms of sovereign currencies. So a financial crash will not affect the ability to transfer value between two parties. But apart from that technicality, Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency serving as a transfer of value between two parties is not much different than the value that is inherently stored in the US dollar, at least on an intrinsic basis. Now, where things get to be more interesting is valuing the currency on an extrinsic basis, which is more of the perceived value of something. To illustrate this, let's talk about the word value for a minute. If you had the opportunity to buy tickets to the Super Bowl a year ahead of time, not knowing who the teams were, you might do so if you felt that the value of those tickets would appreciate, especially if there was a possibility of a blockbuster ratings game between two popular large market teams like the Patriots and the Cowboys. But what if two small market teams made the Super Bowl, like Cleveland and St. Louis? The value of your pre-purchase ticket would likely go down due to smaller demand of tickets for that game. As I write this, with a limited supply ceiling, Bitcoin is being valued as digital gold. And that means that as the supply of Bitcoins runs thin, each Bitcoin would carry a higher value due to scarcity. Now, people are not used to thinking about a digital asset being scarce, which is one of the paradigms that has changed, as we talked about in a previous video. So yes, as of today, Bitcoins are a store of digital value. What we might find is that at some point in the future, some other cryptocurrency might be a better store of digital value, in which case its value would go up and Bitcoins would drop. We see this all the time in the foreign exchange markets today, with currencies going up and down relative to each other based on their perceived value. One of the great innovations of Bitcoin is that it made something that was natively digital into property that you can own. This is different from owning a digital song that you can download from iTunes, because there's no scarcity or limited supply with that song. It cannot appreciate in value unless supply drops. Bitcoin accomplished this by the orchestration of technologies like the blockchain, and the result is that something that is digital can now be limited. It has counterfeit protection, and it can act as property. Because it is the first piece of digital property, again, a new paradigm, you can think of it as the first piece of digital real estate, like beachfront property with limited supply. And when people realized that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins, they decided that they wanted a piece of that property. So hopefully you can see that there are actual parallels in value between Bitcoin and the US dollar, with both being valued based on extrinsic or perceived factors. Where they differ is that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies like it have limited supply, while the US government and others like it around the world continue to inflate their money supply via monetary policy. So yes, Bitcoin has value, but to understand that, you also have to realize the new paradigm that digital assets can have scarcity and hold value as well. Welcome to the new world.